Researchers have found a brand new personality trait that pushes people to victimhood. Find out the details here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, engage live with us. We do go live right here on the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. So go follow me over there at Jimmy Rants. It's pretty easy to find. And once you're there, we do go live 11 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. So go check it out. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page, as well as over on YouTube. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay. We put it in 3 different places for you. So right here, we have it on the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. You can watch it on IGTV. Just as soon as this is over, we throw it right up onto IGTV. We also put the past episodes up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Speaking of YouTube, today is episode 3 of my brand new podcast called One Step Deeper with my best friend, Brittany Davis. And so today we have the subject of stop shoulding yourself. Do you ask should of yourself a lot? I should be in a better job. I should have kids. I should be married. I should. If that's you, today's episode is for you. Go look it up. If you go on YouTube and you type in a keyword kind of One Step Deeper, you'll find it over on YouTube. So go check out. And if you missed any of the past episodes, go look at those as well. Back to Jimmy Rants. Go to JimmyRants.com. And that is the official website for this show. And you can see all the past episodes of this show there. But thank you for being here today. I've got some exciting research to share with you in the realm of psychology. And I love kind of dancing around the outer edges of the health conversation, because a lot of times we put the focus so intently on food and movement and all these things that are directly impactful when it comes to your health. We often neglect the role of some of the mental stuff. And what I really love digging into is looking at the psychology behind why people have beliefs, why people think the way they do, what leads them to express themselves in one way. You know, and we know a lot of people in our lives that have various little quirks, right? Like there's people directly you can think about. As soon as I said the word quirk, somebody popped in your mind and you're like, yep, I know that person's got a quirk. And it's okay. I think quirks are fine. But sometimes people take the quirk to the nth degree. And we know people who like to play the victim. Think about those people in your life. We've all got them. Everything's doom and gloom. Everything in the world is all about woe is me. Oh my gosh, the world cannot be worse. The world is against me. On and on and on they go. And then they go on social media. Oh my gosh, like Facebook is the haven for these people who are the victims. And I know one friend locally who actually, she posts all the time. Literally, I've never seen her do a positive post. It's always, oh my gosh, I wish I could have this. And oh my gosh, my life is so horrible. If I could only have this. Oh my God, oh my. And it's just on and on and on. My friend Brittany says I have all the quirks, every single one of them. Well, quirks, like I said, in and of themselves, the quirks aren't bad. But do you ever wonder where people come up with like the victim mentality? Well, it sounds like researchers have been very curious about that as well. I have a news story as well as the paper itself, only the abstract to the paper. I'm not going to read the whole paper. But researchers have been looking into this, and they have identified, you guys, a new personality trait called TIV, which we'll explain here in a minute what that is. And that TIV pushes people to being a victim and thriving in their victimhood. Now you would think, okay, on a conscious level, they have to know that's no bueno. They have to know that's going to be counterproductive to their mental health and to their life going along the way that it could, but apparently not. But let's get into this because this is really fascinating research. And if you joined us late, yes, I'm very late today on Jimmy Rants. We had a We've had a bad storm here in South Carolina today, and I think it knocked out the internet there for about a half an hour. So about 10 minutes before I was supposed to go live, I had no internet except for the LTE on my main phone. And so I went live initially, and then in the middle of me kind of doing my spiel at the beginning, I saw all of the devices come back on again. Oh, let me start over. And so my apologies for being late, but better late than never. But I'm not gonna consider myself a victim today. That's not my style. No, I'm not a victim. All right, so researchers identify a new personality construct that describes the tendency to see oneself as a victim. This was published in psypost.com. That's P-S-Y-P-O-S-T, .org. P-S-Y-P-O-S-T.org, if you want to go look this up. A new personality construct has been defined that describes people who persistently see themselves as victims within any interpersonal conflicts. This research was published in Personality and Individual Differences. So here is the actual study. Let's see if I can whitewash it on Facebook. There you go. You guys can see it there. You won't be able to read it, but the title of the study, The Tendency for Interpersonal Victimhood, the Personality Construct and Its Consequences, Rehav Gabe, Boaz Hameri, Tammy Rubel Leifschitz, and Ari Nadler are the study authors here. And it's a very short abstract, so I will go ahead and just read the abstract. I don't have the full study. In the present research, we introduce a conceptualization of the tendency for interpersonal victimhood. They call it TIV, which we define as an enduring feeling that the self is a victim across different kinds of interpersonal relationships. Then, in a comprehensive set of 8 studies, we develop a measure for this novel personality trait, again called TIV, and we examine its correlates as well as its affective, cognitive, and behavioral consequences. In part 1, we establish the construct of TIV and note that it has 4 dimensions. Listen to these victimhood traits. These are the various dimensions. The need for recognition. Are you somebody that feels like you don't get recognition and you need it and deserve it? That's part of this victimhood mentality. Moral elitism. Oh, well, I live my life in such a way that, anybody that doesn't live up to my standard is less than. You know those people? Yeah, you want to just slap them in the face, those people. A lack of empathy. Anybody in your life that just cannot empathize with other people going through a tough situation. That's also playing the victimhood. And then rumination, where you just play it over and over and over and over. Now, you probably in those 4 dimensions saw a little bit of yourself. So did Jimmy. But I think it's the totality of all 4 of those that seems to dominate people. Then what they wanted to do in the research was assess TIV's internal consistency, stability over time, and its effect on the interpretation of ambiguous situations. In other words, if you have moments where you express these different dimensions, that's probably okay, but are you seeing it over consistently? It's always there, it's hyper present, and even in the craziest of situations, this still rears its ugly head. That's what we're talking about here. In part 2 of their study, they examined TIV's convergent and discriminant validities using several personality dimensions and the role of attachment styles as conceptual antecedents. And so that's really interesting, kind of seeing how it all works in the real world. Part 3, they explore the cognitive and behavioral consequences that come from having this TIV personality trait. Specifically, they examine the relationships between TIV, negative attribution and recall biases, and the desire for revenge. I know people in my life that they are so tied up in their victimhood that, they do turn to revenge. They can't really see anything but the negative in everything. Am I describing somebody in your life very vividly right now? That if I asked you to scream out their name, you could? Don't. I don't want to hear it. I can't hear it, obviously, but I don't think there's anybody that goes through life that isn't exposed to these kinds of people. And the effects of how that TIV has a behavioral revenge factor, as I said. The findings highlight the importance of understanding, conceptualizing, and empirically testing for TIV, and suggest that victimhood is a stable and meaningful personality tendency. Would you consider that a meaningful personality tendency? I wonder what they mean by meaningful. What would be the positive, meaningful, stabilizing ability of having victimhood? To me, I see it, at least that's just from my point of view, as a negative. Like, I'm trying to see where it would be positive to always be a victim. Anyway, one thing that I don't see, at least in the abstract, is if they address if it's only kind of genetic, and is it kind of a tendency just because that's how your family, does the family dynamic play into it, and any kind of trauma that might have taken place that could shift you in that direction to express this TIV. They don't really get into that. And I hope that as they continue researching this TIV, it becomes more apparent that they need to do some of those rabbit trails of what's the effect of trauma, what's the effect of adverse events in life, what's the effect of various things. Because I think they all can rewire your brain, especially those of you that had adverse events and had trauma in your life early, when your brain, all the synapses and wiring of your brain are still being developed and bad things start to happen. How does that not maybe push you towards this TIV? All right, let's get back to the story about this study. Study authors Rahav Gabe and team describe how the social world is satiated with interpersonal transgressions that are often unpleasant and seemingly unwarranted, such as being interrupted when speaking. Are you one of those people that gets upset when people interrupt you when you're speaking? Yeah, that's me. Especially if I'm in the middle of a thought and I'm rolling and then suddenly and I just totally lose my train of thought. Yeah, that's me. While some people can easily brush these moments off, others tend to ruminate on them and persistently paint themselves as a victim. Well, I can tell you, if somebody cuts me off and I'm in the middle of saying something, my mom has a bad habit of doing this. So I'm talking to my mom and I'm in the middle of like answering something she asked about or telling a story. Right in the middle, she's got to interject like, poof, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mom. It was a not so subtle kind of, shut up. But it's one and done. Like, I don't sit there and just ruminate on it and get upset, and most certainly do not claim to be a victim of that. But it is a trait that I'm noticing in myself. Southern Clean Living says, yes, my mom does that too. I don't know what it is. Mom, I know you gave birth to me and you have the right to pretty much say and do whatever you want to me. But if I'm telling you a story, like I'm literally in the middle of telling her a story, like the middle, not even close to being done yet, and just cuts me off. And I'm like, and then, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. And she's like, oh, I interrupted you, didn't I? Because I've kind of talked to her about this. And she's like, I interrupted you. I said, yeah, but what did you want to say? And so she'd say what she says. And then if I can remember, I pick up where I left off. But Southern Clean Living says it's super annoying. Yeah. I don't let it bother me because I know that about her. Now, if it's somebody brand new and I'm just having a conversation and then suddenly, and they like cut me off. Oh, it pisses me off to no end. Don't do that to Jimmy when you talk, because that's annoying to me. The authors present this feeling of being the victim as a novel personality construct that influences how people make sense of the world around them. And keep in mind, everything that we do is all about processing what's happening in our life and what's happening around us. And so that's an important part of kind of our development as humans. And yeah, so if you're always feeling the victim, it's a personality trait because it's something that now how you see the world. The researchers call this, listen to this, tendency for interpersonal victimhood. You're going to hear a lot more about that if you pay attention to the science in psychology. Tendency for interpersonal victimhood, they're calling it TIV, which they define as, quote, an ongoing feeling that the self is a victim, which is generalized across many kinds of relationships. And again, victimhood can come in a variety of ways, but we all know those people who are always a victim. Doesn't matter what's going on in their life, doesn't matter who they're interacting with, victim, 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 victim. And nothing goes right in the world. And in fact, they even articulate that as such. Oh my gosh, nothing ever goes right in my life. Why is the world against me? Oh my gosh. And it's like those people can never feel a sense of happiness. And it's this TIV, tendency for interpersonal victimhood, that is a personality trait that gets them to feel this way. So they did a series of 8 studies among Israeli adults. Gabay and associates sought to test the validity of the construct of TIV and look at all the behavioral, cognitive, and emotional consequences of having a personality trait. Now, I can probably ask this question right now, and most of you would have an answer right away. How many of you like having friends or family that feel like they're a victim all the time? Raise your hand if that's you. You love those people in your life. They absolutely bring love and joy and happiness. No, none of us have that, right? We all feel exhausted around those people. We all feel, get your life together. What's going on? Why are you feeling that way? It's a sickening feeling when you have those people in your life and they don't even realize they're doing it. And I wonder if they do some of this research, if they look into whether they are self-aware of the TIV, if they're self-aware they're playing the victim. And being the person that I am, talking bluntly to people in my life, if I see somebody playing the victim, I'll call them out on it. Oh, why are you, is it so bad, really? It can be rude, I guess, but I'm getting their attention to try to make them self-aware about it. Because I think a lot of people that are in that situation have no clue that they're in that situation. So they did an initial 3 studies establishing the TIV as a consistent and stable trait. We talked about this when I was reading from the actual study. The trait involves 4 dimensions: moral elitism, a lack of empathy, the need for recognition, and rumination. A follow-up study further found that this tendency for victimhood is linked, listen to this, linked to anxious attachment. This is an attachment style characterized by feeling insecure in your relationships. Know anybody like that? That when you're so identified as a victim, you probably feel like, oh, nobody wants to be my friend. Oh, well, no, I'm all alone. Oh my, I'm so alone. Nobody, woe is me. Nobody cares. And it just feeds into that victimhood, that anxious attachment. It suggests that the personality trait may be rooted in early relationships with caregivers. There it is. So if you grow up with ambivalent parents, or if you grew up and you didn't really have a lot of friends and you felt all alone, or if you were shunned for some reason in your life, if you had something that kind of pushed you in the direction of victimhood, then did it develop in your brain that that's the norm? That that's the way you act? And I don't think enough research and enough press is given to the impact of how you are raised as a child, and its direct impact as how you see the world growing up. Like, this goes really deep in the psychological realm, and I want you to go there because I think it's important that we understand why people act the way that they do. This tendency for interpersonal victimhood, TIV, is pretty fascinating, right? In the next two studies, they offered insight into the cognitive profile of those who have TIV. The studies had participants consider scenarios that involved another person treating them unpleasantly. So either they had subjects read a vignette describing a partner giving them poor feedback. So they read something that basically gave them criticism. Yeah, I can tell that probably didn't go over very well. Or by having subjects play a game that ended with their opponent taking the largest share of the winnings. So they played Monopoly, for example, and they were in a battle, and then at the very end, the other person won more than you did. Oh, I'm the victim. Interesting. The two studies found that those who scored higher on this measure of TIV were more likely to want revenge against the person who wronged them. And this is the thing about this TIV. These are the people that when they have been wronged, they must get their revenge, annihilate their opponent. I have a little bit of that tendency in Words with Friends. So if I play you in Words with Friends and you beat me, there's something in me that says, oh, you're going to pay because I'm going to kick the living crap out of you in this next game. And I've even said as much. I don't like losing, so therefore, this next game, pow, I'm going to just play every big word I can on you and outscore you by 300 points if I can. That's just the way my brain works. And so this idea of revenge, that's an interesting kind of construct with this tendency for interpersonal victimhood, TIV. People that play the victim, you know they're the victim. They score higher on this TIV score than others, then they want to seek revenge against them. Guys, if you're just joining us, I got started a little bit late on Jimmy Rants here today. Had some technical issues with my internet being down in this area, but it came back. Better late than never, right? And we're talking about some new research that is out, finding a brand new personality trait called TIV, stands for Tendency for Interpersonal Victimhood. And it's basically people who feel they're the victim. You know those people in your life, and now psychologists, researchers, are trying to identify the why. Why is that in people's lives? And so we're kind of going over what they found in a variety of studies, which they have published in Personality and Individual Differences. This was back from October of 2020. The study, The Tendency for Interpersonal Victimhood, the Personality Construct, and its Consequences. So we're reading from a news story about the study. In study number 4, this desire for revenge also translated into behavior. Listen to these behaviors. Those who were high in the tendency for victimhood were more likely, listen to this, to remove money from their opponent when given the chance, despite being told that this decision would not increase their winnings. It was just the psychology of, I want to get one up on them because I'm the victim. Now, isn't that interesting? They were told you would get no extra winnings from beating your opponent, and yet they still wanted to win. Fascinating. Participants high in TIV also reported experiencing much more intense negative emotions and a higher entitlement to immoral behavior. Well, I would never, ever do such a thing, and so I can't believe, oh my gosh, they got, of all the people, they got it. And so you kind of take that moral high ground, thinking you're better than this other person. Mediation analysis offered insight into how this revenge process unfolds. This is so fascinating here. The higher the participant's TIV, the more they experienced negative emotions and felt entitled to behave immorally themselves. And so the people taking the moral high ground are the very ones who then act immoral. And I can give you some real life examples of this, but I can't right now. But there are people in my life who try to take the moral high ground, and in the process of them taking the moral high ground are engaging in immoral behavior because they see something from me that makes them think that I'm immoral. So therefore their immoral is less harmful than my so-called immoral, and thus they're taking the moral high ground. See how this victimhood kind of takes root? However, only the experience of negative emotions predicted this behavioral revenge. So somebody has to have a intense negative emotion attached to this. It's there. Gabay and colleagues expressed that their studies indicate that this tendency for interpersonal victimhood is a stable personality trait that is linked to particular behavioral, cognitive, and emotional characteristics. And I would assume it expresses in various ways, but they have some commonality. Deeply rooted in the relations with primary caregivers, the researchers describe, this tendency affects how people feel, how they think, how they behave, and what they perceive as hurtful situations throughout their lives. Think about hurtful situations. How do you respond? Do you get really upset? Do you, in your mind, get angry, want revenge? Do you feel like you're a victim? I have had people in my life where they always felt like a victim. No matter what they did, oh my gosh, woe is me, the world's against me, I can't believe, blah, 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 blah. And I think we can all think of those people in our lives as well. And they constantly go through all their life, hurt after hurt after hurt. And here's the thing. When you live your life that way, where you're constantly hurt and hurt and hurt, are you attractive to other people as a friend, as a lover, as someone that people want in their lives? I'm going to argue no. I'm going to argue that's some of the ugliest people to be around, other than just outright narcissist jerks. Those are the very worst. But this is pretty close. People that are always the victim. Because here's the thing. If you're in their life and they always view themselves as a victim, guess who they're going to blame when things start going cray-cray in their life? Yeah, you. You're going to be their scapegoat. Oh my gosh. Oh, how can you be this way? Oh, it's all your fault. And they're just going to do that. We know those people. The researchers suggest that TIV as a construct offers a framework for understanding how a person's interpretation of social transgressions can inform feelings of victimhood and lead to revenge behavior. You know who these people are? It just popped in my head. It's going to piss some people off, but I don't really care. This is Jimmy Rants. I can piss people off. This is the Karens of the world. You know those Karens out there? Oh my gosh, I've been wrong. Get out of my face. You've done me wrong. I have rights. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Karen, we see you. I wonder if they got a group of known Karens, like people that have been on viral videos, and they tested them for this TIV, what their level of TIV would be. I would say they're all off the charts high. Wouldn't that be a hilarious follow-up study? Yeah, we've seen you in the video. We'd love to do a research paper on you. Come here. And we've got a painless test for you. What? These insights could actually inform therapeutic practices for treating cognitive biases. So think about all the therapists out there who try to help people dealing with this kind of issue. Wouldn't it be helpful if they could test for this TIV? And I've got some therapist friends in my life who I'm going to talk to them about this because I think it's fascinating as a subject of research. Because these are the people that actually need therapy, but they don't know why they need it. And so they're probably the ones that, oh, well, I tried therapy and it didn't work. And it didn't work because they could no longer be the victim. I think people find identity in victimhood. And it's through that identity in victimhood that they find some kind of purpose in a sick, twisted way in this world. I mean, it's something to think about. Why would people purposely put themselves in that situation of feeling like the victim other than they feel some kind of empowerment from it? I don't know. The authors suggest that it would be particularly interesting for future studies to explore what happens when people who are high in TIV are in positions of power. Oh my gosh, could you imagine if we had a TIV person as the President of the United States, for example, or the CEO of the company you work for, or or even, let's just get right down to brass tacks, your boss at work, your spouse, ooh, I said it out loud, your children. There's any number of interpersonal relationships where this could take place. The researchers wonder whether leaders with this persistent tendency see themselves as a victim might feel more inclined to behave in a vindictive way. It makes sense that they would. And yeah, Cariana says, sounds very much like classic narcissism. With a slight twist, because I don't think it's pure narcissism that you're always a victim, but it definitely, being a victim is a trait of narcissism, that you never do anything wrong. And so therefore, and I've done some Jimmy rants on this topic before with narcissism, but it is an interesting kind of crossover into that. All right, so that was that study. I found another article that talks about this victimhood culture. This was published in the reason.com website, so go look that up. Self-victimhood is a personality type. It's another one on this same study. Researchers find people who suffer from a tendency for interpersonal victimhood present themselves as weak, hurt, and vengeful. Now, here's the thing. If somebody is weak and hurt, you would think they don't have the strength to seek revenge. But revenge is their goal. Really, really fascinating. So the weakness is a facade. The hurt's probably real. I won't deny they probably feel hurt, but the weakness is a facade, because if you're truly weak, you can't be vengeful. Because vengeful takes energy. Vengeful takes moxie to stand up, and that's not weakness. That's pretty darn good strength. Now, strength in a very poorly expressed way, but still strength nonetheless. Many social commentators have argued that an emerging victimhood culture incentivizes people to see themselves as weak, traumatized, and aggrieved. Pause. We know those people who post on Instagram and on Facebook and on other places on social media for the sole purpose of, please feel pity on me. You know those people in your life? Yes. We all know those exact people in life. They go and they type something on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter, wherever they post, just to elicit a response of, please like me, love me, give me attention. And that's what they do always. Like, they literally can't help themselves but to feel and express themselves as weak, express themselves as constantly traumatized, and as something has been done wrong to them. You know those people? Yeah, I think you do. Again, names and people popped in your head, and it might be the same people from earlier. In higher education, this has been associated with increased demands for specific accommodations like trigger warnings, which don't work, and the policing of microaggressions, which is ill-conceived. But what if this is not merely a trend, but an entire personality type, which we've already talked about in this journal. Once again, the journal article. All right, let's see if there's anything new in this one. The researchers solicited several hundred participants for a series of psychological experiments. Social psychology research suffers from thorny replication issues. So they're saying this is an interesting study, but they do need other researchers to step up and replicate it so we can see if it's a trend or if it was just a one-off with this particular research group. In one of the papers, a computer split a pot of money between itself and a human participant. This person was led to believe the computer was also a human participant. Now that's interesting. They didn't realize the other person was just a computer, not an actual person. Sometimes the pot was split unevenly. The human participant was given a chance to take vengeance by reducing the computer's pot without growing his own. Researchers discovered that participants classified as having higher TIV scores were strongly associated with behavioral revenge in this scenario. So one of the things I like to do is play Texas Hold'em. And if you play online, you're sometimes playing computers. And yeah, I mean, if you get beat in a hand that you thought you were going to win, and you set up, it for the next hand that this person loses, you'd be willing to lose a little to make them lose a lot. That's an indication you have this TIV trait. TIV was also associated with an increased experience of negative emotion and entitlement to immoral behavior. The study distinguishes it from narcissism. So somebody said, this sounds like narcissism. The study distinguishes TIV from narcissism. Listen to this. Narcissistic individuals also experience moral superiority and vengeful desires, but these feelings tend to spring from the belief that their authority, capability, or grandiosity is being undermined. Whereas on TIV, it is associated with a low self-esteem. While narcissists do not want to be victimized, high TIV individuals lash out when their victimhood is questioned. So if somebody presents themselves as the victim and they have all the signs of please show me compassion and love, and yet people go, yeah, I think you're in the wrong here. I don't think you're mad at that company because they wouldn't give you a refund? Like, I know you feel like that was wrong, but it sounds like you're not entitled to the refund. Oh my gosh, don't tell that to a TIV person. You'll make their brain explode. The self-presentation of high TIV individuals is that of a weak victim who's been hurt and is therefore in need of protection from others. According to the authors, threats to high TIV individuals are related to anything that can undermine their self-image of moral superiority. I don't know why I have trouble with that word. Or elicit doubts from the environment as to whether the offense occurred, the intensity of the offense, or their exclusivity as victims. So these guys, they don't want you questioning their victimhood. They want you to just believe them at face value. Everything they say is accurate. Don't fact check them. Don't go behind them and make sure everything they're saying is true. Just believe, so that you can give them the very thing that they want, and that's empathy, and love, and oh, woe is you, oh, so sorry, and they get attention. That's what it's about. Writing in Scientific American, psychologist Scott Kaufman notes that the researchers do not equate experiencing trauma and victimization with possessing the victimhood mindset. So that was my question earlier. Does trauma and victimization, like actually being a victim of, say, sexual abuse or other types of things like that, is that contributing to this TIV? And they're saying no. They point out that a victimhood mindset can develop without ever having trauma or ever being victimized, which means it could be very innate in the very genetic profile that makes you you. Interesting, huh? Makes you want to take the test for TIV to see where you fall. Kaufman continues, if socialization processes can instill in individuals a victimhood mindset, then surely the very same processes can instill in people a personal growth mindset. And I love that. I think we always turn to the negative side of personality traits. We always see them as, oh, well, negative, negative, negative. But with every negative, think about this. Every negative personality trait someone has, could you shift that same trait in a positive direction and make it a good thing? So this Kaufman guy, Scott Kaufman, a psychologist in Scientific American, said that we could shift people who have this victimhood mindset to a personal growth mindset. What have we learned at a young age? That traumas don't define you. I would have loved to have heard that message, say, circa 30 years ago, that your trauma does not define you. And yet a lot of people go through their whole life having been traumatized, and it's their story. It's the story they tell to everybody they meet. Now, I'm not saying if it's a traumatic story, don't ever tell it. But I think sometimes people so identify with that story that it has become a part of who they are, that it gives them the license to the victimhood. I don't know about you. I don't want to be seen as a victim of anything. I don't. I don't see myself in that way. And yet a lot of people do. That it's possible to have experienced a trauma and for victimhood to not form the core of who you are in your identity. That it's even possible to grow from your trauma, to become a much better person than anybody ever imagined you would. And to use the experiences we've had in our lives towards working to instill hope and possibility to others who were in a similar situation. What have we all learned? That it's possible to have healthy pride for an in-group without having an equal and opposite out-group hate. Can we tell that to the people in the political realm right now? That it's okay to have pride for what you believe in without calling the other side every name in the book just because they don't believe what you believe? Like, one's, yeah, we need that one so bad. That if you expect kindness from others, it pays to be kind yourself. Oh. If you're not kind to other people, why do you expect them to be kind to you? And I'd say what you want people to treat you as, give them that treatment and don't be surprised when you start getting that back. Is it always true? No. But more probable than not, if you're what you want other people to treat you as, then eventually they'll treat you that way. There is a biblical thing called the Golden Rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Remember that? Those of you that have been in church. That no one is entitled to anything, but we are all worthy of being treated as human. My gosh, let's put that on a bumper sticker. Seriously. Encouraging people not to be defined by their traumas, real or imagined, seems like solid advice, but when the traumatized person resents challenges to his victimhood status and wants to punish those who want to take it away from him, getting that advice might just be a challenge. So these people with TIV, all of that I just outlined, could be incredibly difficult. Because again, I think your identity is so tied up in your victimhood. My gosh, if you're one of those people that it seems like everything is wrong in your life and nothing goes well, and oh my gosh, you're the victim, you're the victim, you're the victim, snap out of it! Because it's not doing you any good. It's not growing you any friends. It's not making you look good in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Channel that into something good, into personal growth, into being better, rising above the circumstances that have happened in your life that maybe have led you to this point. You can break the cycle, but it's up to you. It's up to you. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to go here first to Instagram, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. And again, I apologize. We were late. Good old internet was down in Spartanburg, South Carolina for a good little bit. But when it came back, I said, you know what? We're going to go live. It's just going to be late. So JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, we do start here on Jimmy Rants on Instagram. So let's see what my people here have to say. Brittany says, I've been allowing victimized mentality to slip in after recent events, but just 1 week and I can't live like this. Time to pick up and overcome. And that's the thing, Brittany. You noticed it, you recognized what was happening, and you made change happen. I think a lot of people in this mode, they don't recognize when it's happening. They never recognize what they are and who they are, and that maybe they have this tendency for interpersonal victimhood, TIV, going on. Hopefully this Jimmy Rants, if somebody is like that, they're recognizing it in themselves. And recognition, self-awareness is the first step in fixing this issue. But thank you for sharing. Joshua says, it's everyone who likes to sit on their mountain of self-righteousness and try to manipulate others with guilt and shame. Yeah, and I don't play the game. Like, if people try to do that to me, and they do because I'm a public figure, I just don't let them. I just walk away from it. And I feel no guilt and shame about myself because I know who I am, and I don't have to report to anybody who I am. I am who I am. I know who I am. I don't have to explain it to anybody, and certainly not to people who see themselves as victims. Brittany says, when a person that hasn't felt love feels love and seen through victimhood, they will repeat patterns to feel loved. I love that, which is reframing. That's what we're talking about here, reframing this TIV into something positive. So I thank you for sharing that. Adam says, politicians train people to embrace their victimhood. Sad. Oh, Adam, I could go off on a riff on that one for hours, dude, but you're right. Like, they even incentivize the victimhood. Oh, let us take care of you. If you can't take care of yourself, we'll take care of you. And yeah, we're not going to go there, Adam, because I'll get into trouble. Joshua says, it is maybe the type of revenge that just slowly chips away at a person, and comment here and insult there. Maybe. It does sound like, from what they described in this TIV, that the intensity of the revenge factor is so high that I don't know that the little nickel and diming of getting back at somebody. No, I think they're going full bore, pow. As soon as they feel the victimized, I must seek out my revenge. I don't know if it slowly chips away. Now, maybe if they have a lesser degree of this TIV, that's perhaps true. But yeah, sarcasm, passive aggressiveness, it definitely comes out in some way. Amanda says, including in the health and wellness area, people are told they are victims of their disease and therefore have no personal responsibility. They are told that. You go to the doctor and, oh, well, it's genetic. Everybody in your family's obese and diabetic, so therefore you're going to be obese and diabetic. Just deal with it. It's just genetic. It's not your fault. It's no big deal. No. People believe that. Cariana, what do you want to bet this won't get media coverage? Victimhood seems like a major league sport these days. Yeah, I haven't seen anything. Of course, they don't usually do psychology research on the news per se. I did have to seek out a couple of stories on this. There weren't a whole lot. So you're right. They didn't really cover it very big. Joshua says, I always call this learned helplessness. Is there possible damage in creating a label for this? Well, learned helplessness, I think when you get reinforcement that when you're a victim and people come running and giving you sympathy and giving you words and compassion and love, I think some people thrive off of that. So learned helplessness. You reinforce the bad behavior by giving them the very thing they're desiring. I like that, Joshua. Like it a lot. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here now to my Facebook channel. What's up, Facebook? We'll be over here in a minute to YouTube. What's up, Facebook? Misty says, I think it depends on what kind of attitude or energy you put out into the world. If you put out negative vibes and attitude at people and things, you will get bad things. Good vibes, good things. People use these bad things that happen as an excuse to be nasty and angry, which perpetuates the cycle. Misty, that is so wise what you just shared there. And you're right. If you want good and happiness in the world, you need to show good and happiness. Garbage in, garbage out, which is where the negative stuff, if people are always mean and angry, don't be surprised that when people get around you, you perceive them to be mean and angry because you're giving off that vibe. Give off the vibe you want. It's why when I come on Jimmy Rants, I try to be happy, I try to be joyful, energetic, so that you guys see someone that feeds into you, that energy, that positivity. That's my goal here when I do this show, is to give you that. Diane says, yep, victimhood personalities, I believe, are an ancestral trauma handed down, and we are told it's genetics that cause our illness. The result is Stockholm Syndrome and has led us to where we are today. I'm a victim. The world is an unsafe place, and it owes me socialism. I like your point about victimhood personalities being ancestral, and which I would call it generational trauma handed down. And yet it's blamed on genetics. They blame genetics on this, but I wonder, that's a good point, that if you grew up in a household, the parent, where there was abuse that took place and yelling and screaming, and that's how you communicated, and then you go and you get married and you bring that norm from your childhood to now you're the adult and the mom and dad, and you have kids and you scream at them, and then they learn that behavior and it just becomes this generational trauma that's passed down from generation to generation. That's not genetics. That's learned behavior that's passed on. That's a good point. I would love if the researchers look at that angle of this as well. Berkeley says, I like to think the negative things in my life were there to make me stronger. No victim here. And Berkeley, I love that. I think the fact that you reframe it as, yes, it's negative, but it's because I needed to be tested to see the strength that I have. And I love that. That's a good way of reframing it in your head. Jenny says, talking about Joshua's comment, learned helplessness. She liked that, Joshua, so good job. Isn't that what we wean children off of? Not always responding so they grow autonomy. Ooh, that's true. That's true. Man, you guys are bringing it today. I should do more psychology types of Jimmy Rants, because you bring out the A game on there. Thank you, Facebook. Let's pop over here now to my YouTube channel. I've got the old chat back again, so let me scroll back to the top. Shirley says, I've had that. People talking over me happens to me more times than I can count. I used to think what I said didn't matter because people would always do it, even to this day. Well, what you say does matter. You just need to be assertive that, hey, I'm not done. Hold that thought. I'm not done. I have to do that with my mom. I call her out. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mom. And she's like, I interrupted you, didn't I? Yes, you did. Walker 1, I wonder if TIV is directly related to TDS. Walker, you're going to get me in trouble with that one. I'm not going to touch it. Ann says, sounds a lot like my mom. A lot of moms. Walker 1, how much money was spent on a study that gave a scientific name to victimhood? Did they come up with a treatment? We really needed a study to name this trait. Well, I think if they got a grant, and I don't see where they got the money from, nowhere in what I have did they put in there where they got the money for it, but it is Israeli researchers. But you're right. I mean, we do have people that have this, but I think quantifying it as not necessarily learned behavior and that it was kind of there is the difference here with TIV. Shirley says, I tell my kids all of the time, treat others how you want to be treated. It's because you're a good mom, Shirley. That's why. Ann says, thank you for this. I really needed to hear this. Well, good. Yeah, I loved it. And Southern Clean Living says, I love the psychology shows. Yeah, I love these things that get a little bit deeper into people's minds and let you kind of think about what makes people tick, why people act the way they do. These things are never a bad thing. And they're very interesting to me because I know I have specific little quirks about me that make me me. And I'm not saying that everybody that has this TIV is necessarily a bad person in any way. Again, I think, like they said in the article, you can channel that TIV into something positive. That would be personal growth, and maybe you channel it into helping people overcome their victimhood. I see a way to make it a good thing and not always a bad thing. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. Go follow me right here. I'm on Instagram. Follow the username Jimmy Rants, all one word, JIMMYRANTS. We go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, unless the internet is out and we go live late. So thank you guys for joining me today here on Jimmy Rants. We also simulcast on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Thank you all for being here. If you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay right here on Jimmy Rants on Instagram. It is on IGTV, so go look up the show there. We also put the past episodes up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Just a reminder, today on YouTube is episode 3 of my brand new podcast, One Step Deeper, with my best friend, Brittany Davis. And we do a show about stop shoulding yourself. So I wonder if you feel the victim that makes you say I should be this, I should be that, because you're never satisfied. And you're always the victim. I wonder what role that plays in that. Anyway, go watch One Step Deeper. You can look it up just using quotations, One Step Deeper, as a search on YouTube, and you'll find the show. Definitely go check it out. And then finally, you guys, pop on over to the official website for this show. It is JimmyRants.com. Once you're there, you can see all the past episodes. Tomorrow, you guys, Thursday, I got another study. And it's a really crappy study that was published all about low-carb diets and coronary calcium scores. So this is the CT heart scan that if you've read my book, Cholesterol Clarity, I encourage you to go get a CT heart scan to know what your coronary calcium score is. This study claims that those who eat a low-carb diet increase their coronary calcium score. Now, I make the claim that if you eat a low-carb diet in Cholesterol Clarity, it actually decreases it. So find out why this is a bunch of poop on tomorrow's episode of Jimmy Rants. Cannot wait to share that with you guys. And so until then, we'll see you then.